Steve McQueen married 3 times. Each marriage ended. Each woman left carrying pieces of him he could never fully give. But what if each relationship wasn't a failure, but a lesson? This is the story of 3 extraordinary women who tried to teach Steve McQueen how to love, and how in the end he finally learned. Neile, the one who saw him first. 1956, New York City. Steve McQueen was nobody. A struggling actor doing off-Broadway theater, living in a cold-water flat, eating when he could afford to. Then he met Neile Adams. She was a dancer, successful, beautiful. Everything Steve wasn't. She had a career on Broadway. He had dreams and desperation. Their first date was at a cheap diner. Steve couldn't afford anything better. Neile didn't care. "Tell me about yourself," she said. Most people Steve would have lied to, created some romantic backstory, but something about Neile made him tell the truth. "I grew up in foster homes. My mom left me. My stepdad beat me. I spent time in reform school. I've been broke, homeless, and hungry most of my life. I'm not a good bet." Neile looked at him, really looked at him. "But you're here. You survived all that, and you're still fighting. That makes you the best bet." Steve had never met anyone who saw his past as strength instead of damage, who looked at his scars and saw survival instead of weakness. They married in 1956. Neile was 23. Steve was 26. Everyone said it wouldn't last. A Broadway dancer and a nobody actor, give it 6 months. They lasted 13 years. But what Neile didn't know was what staying with Steve would cost her. Neile taught Steve his first lesson about love commitment. Before her, Steve had never stayed with anyone, never trusted anyone enough to stay. But Neile was different. She believed in him when he was nothing, supported him when he had nothing, loved him when he was nobody. When Steve got his first real break, wanted dead or alive, Neile was there. When he became a star, Neile was there. When Hollywood wanted to change him, package him, control him, Neile reminded him who he really was. "Don't let them make you safe," she'd say. "Stay dangerous. Stay yourself." Neile gave Steve 2 children, Terry and Chad, gave him a home, gave him stability. For the first time in his life, Steve had something to protect, someone who depended on him, a reason to not run. But Steve's demons didn't disappear just because he was loved. His childhood abandonment, his fear of being left, his need to control everything, to feel safe, all of it came with him into the marriage. The affairs started early, not because Steve didn't love Neile, but because he couldn't believe she wouldn't leave. So he sabotaged, tested, pushed, waiting for her to prove she was like everyone else, temporary. But Neile didn't leave. For 13 years she stayed, through the affairs, through the anger, through Steve's inability to be fully present even when he was home. "Why do you stay?" her friends would ask. "Because I see who he could be, who he is underneath the fear, and I believe love can heal him." But love can't heal what someone won't acknowledge, and Steve wouldn't acknowledge his wounds, wouldn't do the work, wouldn't change. Ali, the one who challenged him. Minus 1,972. Steve was at the peak of his fame, The Great Escape, Bullet. He was Hollywood's biggest star, and his marriage to Neile was falling apart. Then he met Ali MacGraw on the set of The Getaway. Ali was different from Neile, educated, sophisticated, independent. She'd just come off Love Story, was a major star in her own right. She didn't need Steve's fame. She had her own. And that's exactly what attracted him. Neile had been supportive, nurturing, patient. Everything Steve needed when he was building his career. But now that he'd made it, Steve wanted something else. Someone who challenged him. Someone who was his equal. Ali challenged him constantly, intellectually, creatively, emotionally. She didn't accept Steve's excuses, didn't enable his behavior, called him out when he was wrong. "You're being controlling," she'd say. "I'm being protective." "No, you're being insecure, and I won't live that way." Steve divorced Neile and married Ali in 1973. Neile was devastated. Not just because Steve left, but because she'd given 13 years trying to heal him, and he'd left her for someone who represented everything. Neile wasn't. But Ollie's lesson for Steve would be the hardest one. Ollie taught Steve his second lesson about love. You can't control what you love. You have to trust it. Steve had controlled Neile, where she went, who she saw, what she did. Neile had allowed it because she understood his fear. But Ollie wouldn't. I'm not your possession, Steve. I'm your partner. If you can't trust me, this won't work. For the first time, Steve was forced to confront his need for control, and he discovered something terrifying. He didn't know how to love without controlling. Control was how he felt safe, how he prevented abandon. Without control, he was vulnerable. The marriage was intense, passionate, explosive. Steve and Ollie fought constantly, not physically, but emotionally, both strong-willed, both refusing to back down, both damaged in different ways. Steve wanted Ollie to give up her career, focus on him, be his support system, exactly what Neile had done. But Ollie wouldn't. I'm not Neile. I have my own career, my own identity. I won't erase myself for you. Then you don't love me enough. No, Steve, you don't love me correctly. You want possession, not partnership. The marriage lasted 5 years. It ended not with an affair or a fight, but with exhaustion. Both of them tired. Both of them realizing they wanted different things. Steve wanted someone who would center their life around him. Ollie wanted someone who would let her be herself. When Ollie left in 1978, Steve was stunned. He'd thought Ollie was different, thought she was strong enough to handle him. But she wasn't different. She just had better boundaries. After Ollie, Steve spiraled. The divorce devastated him, made him question everything. If Nile's endless patience wasn't enough, if Ollie's strength wasn't enough, what was enough? What did he actually need? Barbara, the one who gave him peace. 1977, before his divorce from Ali was even final, Steve met Barbara Minty. She was a model, 22 years old. Steve was 47. Everyone assumed it was another Steve McQueen conquest, another young woman dazzled by fame. But Barbara was different from Neile and Ollie in a crucial way. She didn't want to change Steve. She accepted him as he was. I'm difficult, Steve warned her early on. I know. I'm controlling, jealous, damaged. I know. And you still want this? Barbara smiled. I'm not here to fix you, Steve. I'm here to love you. Those are different things. Steve didn't understand at first. Neile had tried to heal him. Ali had tried to challenge him, but Barbara just loved him. Without agenda, without expectation, without trying to make him into something else. They married in 1980, just months before Steve's cancer diagnosis. Some people said Barbara married him for money, for fame, for whatever she could get before he died. But those people didn't see what Barbara did. She nursed Steve through his illness, sat with him through the pain, held him through the fear, asked nothing in return. And in his final months, Steve finally learned what love actually meant. Barbara taught Steve his third and final lesson about love. Love is acceptance, not transaction. With Neile, love had been transactional. She gave patience and support. Steve gave fidelity and presence. When he couldn't hold up his end, the marriage failed. With Ollie, love had been conditional. If you change, I'll stay. If you control less, I'll love more. But neither could change enough. With Barbara, love was simply love. No conditions, no transactions, no attempts to fix or change or control. Just presence, just acceptance, just being with someone as they are. In his final interview, recorded 2 weeks before his death, Steve was asked, what's the most important thing you've learned? That love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about accepting someone completely. Neile tried to heal me. Ollie tried to change me. Barbara just loved me. And that's what I needed all along. Do you regret your first 2 marriages? No, because they taught me what I didn't know. Neile taught me I was worthy of commitment. Ali taught me I couldn't control everything. Barbara taught me I didn't have to. Each woman gave me exactly what I needed when I needed it. I was just too broken to appreciate it until the end. The letters. After Steve died, Barbara found letters in his desk. Letters he'd written but never sent, one to each of his wives. To Neile, you loved me when I was nothing, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself, gave me children and a home and a reason to be better. I repaid you with affairs and absence and endless testing to see when you'd leave. You stayed far longer than you should have. I'm sorry I made you prove your love over and over when I should have just trusted it. You taught me that I was worthy of commitment. That lesson saved my life. I just wish I'd learned it while we were still together. Thank you for seeing me. I'm sorry I couldn't see you back. Love always, Steve. To Ollie, you challenged me in ways I wasn't ready for, made me confront my need for control, forced me to see that love isn't possession. I fought you because you were right, and I wasn't ready to admit it. I wanted you to be like Neile, patient and accommodating, but you refused. You stood your ground. You chose yourself, and even though it ended us, it taught me something essential, that strong people don't sacrifice themselves for love. They demand love that honors them. I couldn't give you that, but I'm grateful you didn't settle for less. You taught me that real love requires trust, not control. I hope you found someone who can love you the way you deserve. Respectfully, Steve. But the letter to Barbara revealed Steve's final truth. To Barbara. I don't know how to write this without sounding like every dying man who suddenly sees clearly, but here it is. You showed me what love actually is, not the desperate clinging I gave Neile, not the controlling obsession I gave Ali, but simple, steady, unconditional acceptance. You knew who I was, all my flaws, all my damage, all my impossibility, and you loved me anyway, not because you thought you could change me, not because you needed something from me, just because. I spent 50 years thinking love meant holding on tight so people couldn't leave. But you taught me love means holding gently so people can choose to stay. I wish I'd met you first. But I needed Neile and Ollie to teach me the hard lessons before I could appreciate the simple one you offered. That love is enough. Thank you for my final chapter, for making my last months peaceful instead of afraid, for showing me that even at the end I was worthy of tender love. You saved me in a different way than Neile did. You gave me peace, and that's the greatest gift. I love you. Simply, completely, without fear. Steve, 3 teachers. Barbara gave the letters to Neile and Ali. Both women read Steve's words with tears. Years later, the 3 women met, not planned. A chance encounter at a Hollywood event. They recognized each other immediately. For a moment, they didn't know what to say. These 3 women, who'd loved the same impossible man, who'd each been hurt by him, changed by him, taught by him. Neile spoke first. You look well, Barbara. Thank you. You both do, too. Ollie said carefully, I'm sorry for how it started, for the pain I caused. Neile shook her head. You didn't cause it. Steve's wounds caused it. We were all just trying to love a man who didn't know how to be loved. Until he did, Barbara added quietly. At the end, he learned. They talked for hours, compared experiences, shared stories, realized they'd each faced the same patterns, just in different ways. Did you ever regret marrying him? Ali asked both women. Neile considered. No, because he gave me children and taught me that you can love someone deeply and still need to leave them. Ali nodded. He taught me that I'm not responsible for fixing broken men, that choosing myself isn't selfish. Barbara smiled sadly. He taught me that even the most damaged people can learn if they have enough time and enough love. But what Steve's 3 wives realized that night changed everything. We weren't 3 failures, Neile said slowly. We were 3 teachers. Ali looked at her. What do you mean? Steve couldn't learn everything from one person. He needed all 3 of us. I taught him commitment. You taught him boundaries. Barbara taught him acceptance. Each lesson built on the last. Barbara nodded. He couldn't appreciate what I gave him if he hadn't first learned what you 2 taught him. They sat with that truth, that Steve's 3 marriages weren't 3 failures, They were one long education in how to love. "Do you think he died happy?" Ali asked. Barbara answered, "He died peaceful, and for Steve McQueen, that was better than happy." Peace was what he'd been searching for his whole life. The legacy: the three women stayed in touch after that night. Not close friends, but connected by shared history, by the man they'd all loved, by the lessons they'd all learned. Neile, in her memoir, wrote, "Steve McQueen was the great love of my life. But I had to learn that being someone's great love doesn't mean they can love you back the way you need. I gave Steve everything. He gave me what he could. I don't regret it, but I also don't regret leaving." Ali, in her interviews, said, "Steve taught me that I can survive anything, that I'm stronger than I thought, that loving someone who can't love correctly doesn't make me weak. Leaving makes me strong." Barbara, in rare conversations about Steve, shared, "Everyone asks if I regret marrying a dying man, but they don't understand. Those final months were the most honest of Steve's life. He finally stopped running from himself. I'm grateful I got to see that, got to love that version of him." But perhaps the most important lesson came from an unexpected source. Steve's daughter, Terry, Neile's child, grew up watching her father's relationships, watched her mother's pain, watched Ali's struggle, watched Barbara's devotion. In 2005, Terry did an interview. The journalist asked, "What did your father's relationships teach you about love?" Terry thought carefully. "They taught me that love is not enough. You also need timing, maturity, and willingness to grow." Dad loved all three women, but he was at different stages of growth with each. He couldn't give Neile what she needed because he was too broken. He couldn't give Ali what she needed because he was too resistant. He gave Barbara what she needed because he was finally ready. People always ask which marriage was the real one, but they all were. Each served its purpose. Each taught its lesson. Each mattered. My father's greatest gift to women, ironically, was showing them what love shouldn't be, showing them that they deserved better than what he could give. And in that, maybe he loved them more than he knew. The question: if Steve McQueen could speak now, what would he say about his three wives? Based on his letters, his interviews, his final words, perhaps this: "I failed three extraordinary women, not because I didn't love them, but because I didn't love myself." Unhealed people can't fully love others. We just wound them with our wounds. Neile deserved a husband who could accept her love without testing it constantly. I couldn't be that. My abandonment wounds were too fresh. Ali deserved a husband who could trust without controlling. I couldn't be that. My fear of losing control was too strong. Barbara deserved more time. Deserved me at my best, not my end. But she got me at my most teachable. And that's something. Each woman deserved better than I gave. But each woman made me better for the next. That's not fair to them. They shouldn't have had to pay the price of my education. But here's what I learned. Love isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about becoming the person capable of love. And that takes work, time, healing, willingness. I didn't start that work until it was too late. But maybe sharing my failures can help someone else start sooner. And then something unexpected happened. Minus 2010, Barbara, Neile, and Ali were all invited to a tribute for Steve McQueen at the Academy of Motion Pictures, a retrospective of his films, a celebration of his legacy. They sat together, three women, three wives, three chapters of one man's life. When Steve's face appeared on screen, young, vital, iconic, they all felt it, that pull he'd had, that charisma, that wounded intensity that drew people in. After the tribute, a young actor approached them. "I'm sorry, but I have to ask. You all loved him. Was he worth it?" The three women looked at each other. Then Neile spoke. He was worth knowing, worth the lessons learned. But no man is worth losing yourself for. Ali added, "Loving Steve cost me my career, my confidence, and years of my life. But it taught me my value. So in a strange way, yes, the lesson was worth the price." Barbara concluded, "He was worth loving at the end, when he'd finally learned how to receive love. I got the best version of him, and I'm grateful." The young actor nodded. "So which of you did he love most?" All three women smiled, because they'd discussed this question themselves, and they'd reached a conclusion. Barbara answered, "He loved each of us as much as he was capable of at that time. That capacity grew with each relationship. So maybe he loved me most, or maybe he just loved best, but he loved all of us, in his way." 3 teachers, 1 student. The phone rang at 2 a.m., but this time it wasn't bad news. It was Steve's son, Chad, calling Barbara. "I found something in Dad's things. I think you should read it." He sent her a photograph, a page from Steve's journal. His last entry written 2 days before he died. It read, "3 women tried to teach me how to love. It took dying for me to finally learn. Neile taught me that I deserve love, that broken people can be loved, that my past doesn't define my worth. Ali taught me that love requires trust, that control is fear, that strong people don't diminish themselves for relationships. Barbara taught me that love is simple, that acceptance matters more than perfection, that peace is possible. I failed as a husband 3 times, but each failure taught me something, and at the end I finally understood love isn't about holding on. It's about letting go of fear, of control, of the belief that I'm unworthy. I'm grateful to all 3 women. They stayed far longer than they should have, gave more than I deserved, taught lessons I finally learned. If I could do it over, I'd start with healing myself instead of expecting women to heal me. I'd do the work before the relationships, not during them. But I can't do it over, so I can only say thank you to Neile, to Ollie, to Barbara. Thank you for trying. Thank you for teaching. Thank you for loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. You all deserved better than I gave, but you gave me everything, and I hope that somewhere, somehow, that balances out." Barbara read it through tears. Then she sent it to Neile and Ali, 3 women, 3 wives, 3 teachers who'd tried to teach Steve McQueen how to love. And in the end, finally, the student learned. Steve McQueen married 3 times. Each marriage ended. Each woman left carrying pieces of him. But they also left carrying something else. The lessons they'd taught, the strength they'd gained. The knowledge that no relationship is a failure if something is learned. Neile learned she was worthy of better treatment. Ollie learned she was strong enough to choose herself. Barbara learned she could love without needing to fix. And Steve learned that love isn't about finding someone to heal you. It's about healing yourself enough to love someone properly. He learned too late for his marriages, but just in time to die at peace. 3 women taught Steve McQueen how to love, and in teaching him, they learned how to love themselves. That's not a tragedy. That's a gift. Even if it took 3 relationships and 50 years to unwrap it, you might be like Steve McQueen, going from relationship to relationship, wondering why it never works, blaming the other person, blaming timing, blaming circumstances. But ask yourself Steve's question, am I showing up healed, or am I expecting love to heal me? Because unhealed people can't love healthily. They can love intensely, desperately, obsessively, but not healthily. Steve's 3 wives deserved a healed man. They got a healing man, and they paid the price of his education. Don't make Steve's mistake. Don't use relationships as therapy. Do the work first. Heal first. Learn first. Then love, from wholeness, not wounds. Because the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong person. Steve had 3 right people, all at the wrong time, until the very end. Don't waste decades learning what you could learn now. You have to love yourself before you can love anyone else. 3 women tried to teach Steve that it took dying for him to finally hear it. How long will it take you?